Oké, meneer de recteur, monsieur le président, meneer de recteur van de VUB, monsieur le président de l'ULB, messieurs les vice-recteurs, dear colleagues, dear friends, it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you for this opening ceremony of the Brussels Studies Institute for Advanced Studies. I am here with Professor Frank Deconinck. We are the co-director of the BrIAS. I am sure that all of you know what an Institute for Advanced Studies is, but I am not sure you know that the first Institute for Advanced Studies was created in 1930. Perhaps some of you have the chance to see the movie Oppenheimer, and in this movie you have you see Albert Einstein and with Robert Oppenheimer. And Robert Oppenheimer was during 20 years the director of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Princeton because it was the first one. And in this institute, you had Albert Einstein, but also Pierre Deligne from the Université Libre de Bruxelles, Jean Bourgain from the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. And this institute was an haven for scholars and scientists. The idea was to attract colleagues from all over the world and to give to those fellows a complete intellectual liberty and to give them the opportunity to think to new research and to provide them the facilities, but also tranquility and time. Of course, it's really important to do research. It was in 1930, and today, in 2026, there are around 30 institutes for advanced studies in the world. You see that most of them are in Europe, some of them in the States or in Asia. But until 2018, there was no Institute for Advanced Studies in Belgium. And a former rector of the ULB, Professor Didier Vivier, had in mind when the two universities receive this building and what we call the barracks of the Gendarmerie de Belgique, he had the idea to develop a new concept and a new institute for advanced studies. And the two rectors, Professor Caroline Pauwels from the VUB and Professor Yvon Angler from ULB, decided to develop this Institute for Advanced Studies. The idea was to have a place dedicated to stimulate research and development ideas and to foster cooperation between the two universities. You know, we are two sister universities. In the past, it was only one university, and now you have a Flemish and a French-speaking university. But for the last 10 years, they have developed a lot of collaboration, and BrIAS is one of those collaboration. The idea is to use BrIAS to break down the walls of ignorance and dogmatism, and to do that by stimulating groundbreaking research at the highest level of creativity without taboos. The idea is also to invite colleagues, scholars from all over the world, and those scholars, we call them fellows, are coming from a lot of countries, but also from different disciplines and socio-cultural backgrounds. The idea is to give them an opportunity to discuss together, to do research, but also to be in touch with the colleagues of the two universities. Those objectives are the objective of all the Institute for Advanced Studies. But this one wants also to develop collaboration research on a controversial subject with important societal impact. And one of our ideas is also to attract colleagues who are in danger in their countries. As you know, this is really important for ULB and VUB to try to have a place where it's possible for those researchers to spend some months with other colleagues. Another very important thing is also to attract colleagues from the global south. You see that on the map. There is a lot of Institute for Advanced Studies. There are not a lot in Africa. And so we think that it's a place also to attract colleagues coming from the global south.
Thank you, Serge. And from me too, welcome to all of you. We started in 2018 by building, I would say, the whole framework for BrIAS. But the very first project, which was a pilot project, was on the past, present, and future of food, climate, and sustainability. Because this pilot study was successful, we had seminars every week during a couple months. And I remember that the fellows were so enthusiastic that there was even a month where during a week we had a seminar every single day because the fellows said, me too, I want to give a seminar. And the organization, I would say, was able at that time to adapt and to, how should I say, to survive. Now everything is going much smoother. Thanks also to the second program we had on robots, artificial intelligence, and automation. And you may have seen outside that there is printed copies of the report of this second theme. And today, we are very happy to have the opening ceremony for the democratic governance challenges and innovation theme. So we work by themes. The themes are directed from the scientific point of view by one responsible person from ULB, one responsible person from VUB, and they build the entire program. And you will meet Emily and Silvia in a few minutes. The fellows and guests, since 21, to date, we hosted 76 senior fellows. What are senior fellows? It is scientists of a high level, typically professor, associate professors. We also had 24 junior fellows, which are postdocs. We had resident artists, and I will talk about the Association of Art in a few minutes. They came from more than 100 universities or research institutes or policy centers from more than 30 countries. And you see an image of some of the fellows we had here. As you can see, they came from different sociocultural areas, and they all had also coming from different disciplines. Now, if you want to bring together and be creative, you have to make sure that there are different viewpoints present. And I told you about artists. Thanks to the collaboration with the VZ2 ASBL OHM, and represented here, we have hosted, and we will host in the future, always a few artists who they follow the seminars, they present their work, they interact with the scientists. In the beginning, it was an experience, but we have seen that the artists, I would say, inspire the scientists, and the scientists inspire the artists. So it really brings an added value to the entire program. When you want to optimize creativity, as Serge said, this is our main goal. It's to have a place where ideas may grow out of it through interactions between scientists from different disciplines. This is important. Different disciplines which means that usually they won't meet each other at congresses. They have to be in the same area for sufficiently long time in order to be able to understand each other, to listen to each other, to start collaborating with each other, to discuss, to disagree, to agree. And when we know all of this, when do ideas sometime come out of the sky? It's during drinking coffee, it's having a walk, etc. And therefore we house them here. We have apartments there and there. They live together. In the evening they may gather, they may have a party together, and they interact. And then we hope that some bright ideas will come out of this. You see here a few examples of apartments and rooms. So this was a very short introduction to BrIAS. We really wish you a very inspiring opening ceremony. You see the staff here, and I now propose to ask to the floor Marius Gilbert, Vice-Rector of ULB Research. Marius. I don't know whether I have to continue.
That's okay. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Rector and the Michos, and in my capacity as Vice-Rector of Research, it is my great pleasure to open this BrIAS season devoted to democratic governance. In preparing this address, I revisited the remark I delivered at the opening of this program. At that time, I drew a parallel between the continuous pursuit of knowledge, so central to scientific progresses, and the ongoing effort required to improve our democratic systems. In other words, we should never regard democracy as a finalized or optimal system, just as we do not consider scientific knowledge to be complete. Both should instead be understood as horizons, goals, and ideals that guide us in the continuous endeavor to improve our societies. Yet, rarely has this conviction been accompanied by such a strong sense of urgency as it is today, both at international levels and at the local level here in Brussels. I've always harbored certain reservation regarding collapsology, the school of thought that call attention to the risk of the collapse of industrial civilizations. This framing struck me as overly catastrophic, and that it induced a form of fatalism likely to divert attention away from the collective actions needed to redirect social and economic trajectories in face of challenges deemed unsurmountable. However, if collapse is understood as a much more gradual process, it becomes difficult to deny that it is already underway. Current events immerse us in the excesses of the Trump administration, but at the global level, indicators describing the state of democracy had already begun to decline as early as 2010. The success of populist leaders and the rise of far-right movements that exploit crises and fears to seize power are not new phenomena. The contemporary opposition of the US to multilateralism, consultation, and adherence to international legal norms, as well as to social and environmental protection, is very striking in its impact. Yet, it represents only the most visible expression of dynamics that had previously affected other regions of the world, including Europe. In many Western countries, this contraction also reaches into the private sphere of family. Fertility rates have fallen below replacement levels and continue to decline. This trend poses intractable challenges to the sustainability of pension systems and fiscal balance unless it is offset by immigration, an adjustment that in turn fuels populist and xenophobic movement. Moreover, while overall human health continues to improve, nearly all indicators describing the state of the environment are now in the red. The retreat of democracies and multilateralism, declining fertility, and unprecedented environmental degradation, despite continuous economic growth, suggest that societies in high-income countries have indeed entered a phase of regression. As an alternative to the notion of collapse, the biologist Olivier Hamon has proposed the concept of a shift, basculement, between two regimes. The first characteristics of the 20th century was dominated by the optimization of performance made possible by stable and abundant material and energy resource. The second regime, towards which we are now moving, must adapt to increasingly uncertain resources, exploitable only in limited quantities due to finite stock or environmental constraints on their use. This new regime requires a comprehensive rethinking of production and distribution systems, transforming them into structures that are more frugal, circular, cooperative, and above all more robust in the face of an intrinsically more variable context. We now stand at the heart of this shift between regimes, and the various Trumps of this world may be seen as symptoms of societies that refuse to change and seek to cling to a rapidly vanishing past. The prevailing impulse is to seize by any means as necessary, including violence, the last reserve of gas, oil, and rare earth elements before being forced to produce and consume differently. According to Amand, the countries that will fare best in the long term are those that manage to navigate this shift while minimizing economic, social, and human costs. By emphasizing transformation rather than loss alone, this perspective has the considerable merit of steering us away from a rhetoric of endings and instead highlighting the necessary adaptation, recompositions, and technical and societal innovation that could allow us to move as rapidly as possible toward a new regime of stability. Embracing this more optimistic vision makes it possible to look further ahead, to maintain a sense of direction, and to sustain the ideal of progress in a period marked by the resurgence of obscurantism. The same logic applies to democracy. How can we transform our democratic systems to be more robust in the face of an increasingly unpredictable context, both at the local and international level? How can they be adapted to the profound structural changes in the production and circulation of information? Those and many other questions will be part of this year's program, and I would like to extend my sincere thanks to those who have contributed to making it possible. The BrIAS directors, staff, program directors, and of course the fellows who are embarking on this journey. It is both an honor and a great pleasure to know that many outstanding minds will engage with these questions, collaborate, and exchange ideas within our walls as part of this year's BrIAS program. This is how science operates, and this is how, as an institution, we can play our part in contributing to a better world. Thank you.
Dear rectors, president, colleagues, the benefit of having two sister universities organizing this is that collaboration is in our DNA. The downside is that there are two vice-rectors and two welcome speeches to listen to. But I'm glad as the vice-rector of the VUB to add our perspective to the speeches. It's often stated, and rightfully so, that the disruptive times that we are living in and the erosion or adaptation, hopefully, of democracy that we are witnessing, that they call for two things: courage and critical sense. Now, courage, you can define it as doing things that could end disastrously. But you could also define stupidity in that way. And critical sense, you could define as questioning everything, but you could define also conspiracy thinking in that way. And the difference between courage and stupidity, between critical sense and conspiracy thinking, lies in two things: methodology and common sense. And methodology is a feature of research, and common sense is a feature of discussing together across cognitive, disciplinary, and geographical boundaries. Bring these things together, and you have an Institute for Advanced Studies. It's an old saying that while the world has problems, the university has departments. You know where I got that quote. The complex, so-called wicked problems of today, like democratic erosion or adaptation, climate change, or societal polarization, require integrated, interdisciplinary solutions. But universities are traditionally structured into academic departments, creating sometimes silos that could hinder cross-disciplinary collaboration and effective problem solving. One of the ways to tackle this is to set up an Institute for Advanced Studies, an IAS. They are different from, but complementary to universities. While research at a university can often be, and often has to be, hyper-specialized, Institutes for Advanced Studies are optimized to generate comprehensive discussions, unexpected ideas, controversial discoveries. IASs are incubators of ideas where some of the very best and most promising scientists, artists, or designers coming from various fields and countries are given the opportunity to work in an atmosphere of, it has been said, complete freedom, collaboration, mutual emulation, and cross-fertilization. And this implies crossing boundaries, building bridges between disciplines and different socioeconomic or cultural environments. And Belgium, and Brussels in particular, is a patchwork of such different socioeconomic and cultural environments. So we know all about boundaries, but we also know all about bridging things. And we think that this place offers a unique potential for creativity and groundbreaking progress, making it quite attractive to all those who want to help shape a more sustainable future. And for that, it has been said, you need three things. First, you must be able to think out of the box and to dream. And this may not be optimal in the researcher's routine environment. Second, meeting with fellow researchers from different disciplines opens perspectives for unanticipated discussions, confrontations, ideas. And third, creative thinking is not restricted to 9 to 5. The best ideas, again it has been said, may come while discussing during a dinner or an afternoon walk. So to optimize disruptive creative thinking, one should bring together several high-level researchers from a wide spectrum of disciplines around a general theme and give them the opportunity to work, discuss, challenge, and spend time together in a stimulating environment. That is, we think, the added value that an Institute for Advanced Studies brings to a university, and a fortiori on the topic of the state of our democracy. And this, dear friends, is why the VUB supports wholeheartedly this initiative. Thank you very much.
To try to find my way back. Yes. Okay. That's okay, it's showing. All right. Can we see it here? I don't know. Because I don't know how to know. Okay. So technology is one of the challenges of democracy, but also of academics, it seems. So dear distinguished guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, following the kind welcomes you've already heard, it is our true pleasure to welcome you to once again to the 2026 opening ceremony. And I mean Emilie van Houten and myself, Silvia, Erzeel, as program directors of this program on democratic governance. So every 2 years, indeed, BrIAS selects a new program, and the theme for the 2025-2027 program is that of democratic governance, challenges, and innovations. So the starting point of this program is actually a democracy that is under pressure today. People are becoming more dissatisfied with how politics works. Authoritarianism is gaining ground, and democracies are increasingly vulnerable, both in terms of internal but also external threats. But democracy is also resilient. And we see many initiatives that try to innovate and reimagine and protect democracy as well. So in this context, the Democratic Governance Program wants to study the challenges on the one hand, so what is going wrong, but you also want to think about how democracy can be innovated and reimagined. So hopefully we can propose ideas and solutions for democracy in the future. So the program on democratic governance is set up around 4 work packages and 2 cross-cutting themes, and you see them here on the slides. The first work package is on polarization, populism, and violence, and focuses on when and how polarization and divisions and conflict in society challenge democracies, and to what extent or how they might lead to violent conflict. The second one is on democratic short-termism and sustainability, and this one focuses on how we can better equip democracies to handle long-term challenges, such as climate change or budget deficits, and take into account the interests of future generations. The third one focuses on technology, misinformation, and AI, and studies how digital technologies and AI have reshaped democratic processes and how democracies can counter also the spread of misinformation. And then the fourth one is on inequality and inclusion, and this one considers how democracies can address structural inequalities, such as those linked to gender, race, ethnicity, economic power, and wealth. So these are the 4 work packages, and then we also have these 2 cross-cutting themes, one on democratic innovation, so really the question, how can we innovate democracies, and also one on the role of art in democracy. The program will be carried by an interdisciplinary and inter-university team of scholars in political science, sociology, communication studies, social psychology, architecture, gender studies, migration studies, computer sciences. So in addition to Emilia and myself, there's also an entire group of people involved, and we showed a picture. This is actually the first picture of our very first meeting we had last year, and we really like this picture, so we keep showing it to people. So there's a lot of people involved, and we also have 8 work package leaders, and you see them, some of them here on this picture. Bram Spruit, Jasper van Assche, Louise Knop, Titi Kaluwaerts, Ike Picone, Caroline Kloos, Daniel Zamora, and Karen Celis. And in addition to this team, each season the program will also host international senior fellows, junior fellows, artists in residence, who will contribute to our events, our activities, our discussions. So let's take a look at who is joining us this year.
I'm at the stage of my life where I need my glasses for these speeches. So we're incredibly proud to present to you the international senior fellows who will be joining the program for this season. As it has been explained, at the heart of BrIAS and the BrIAS program is a very prestigious international visiting fellowship program that brings leading scholars from around the world to Brussels. And these experts will enjoy, we hope, full intellectual freedom to think, write, and conduct research on democracy. So for this season, 10 senior fellows from different parts of Europe, but also the world, Singapore, Ghana, Senegal, will join us in Brussels. You have here Petra Arends from Tampere University, Serge Gerginia from the University of Glasgow, Omar Gay from the University Cheikh Anta Diop of Dakar, Amanda Machin from the University of Agder, Liza Muge from the University of Amsterdam, Isaac Owusu-Mensah from the University of Ghana, Maria Radoman from the University of Belgrade, Luana Russo from Maastricht University, Edson Tandok from Nanyang Technology University, Singapore, and Tanya Verge from the University Pompeu Fabra. Some of them are already arrived and are present in the room today. A big welcome to all of you. We wish you a fruitful stay, and we hope that you will find a home away from home here in BrIAS. And in addition to our senior fellows, we have also a program supported by a strong team of junior fellows, without which the program honestly would not be possible. They are postdoctoral researchers studying democratic governance here at VUB and ULB. And our junior fellows for 2026 are Maria Babinska from the ULB, Pauline Grippa from the ULB, Nino Junius from the VUB, Luc Akins from the ULB, and Joke Mathieu from the VUB. Thank you to all of you for your support in the program. And we have a lot of activities planned for the next 2 years. We have the Big Ideas for Democracy lectures that will be high-level lectures featuring our senior fellows. They will share their big ideas for the future of democracy. These lectures will be open to the wider public and will usually take place in the early evening, followed by an aperitif. And then we have our weekly Thursday research seminars organized around lunch. They feature national and international guests whose work aligns with our core research themes. So book your Thursday at lunch for the coming months. We have a very nice lineup of seminars. We're also planning a week around art and democracy together with OHME, our resident artist, and we will be paying specific attention to the role of cities, but also art in democratic resilience. Then we also have events looking at democracy in practice. It's not only connecting to other academics in the world, but also to practitioners of democracy, hence also the talk after the speeches today. We will host public forum to bring together academics and practitioners and civil society actors to discuss democracy in practice. And finally, we'll have also summer schools with several of our partners in the project on democratic governance to connect again to this program. So if you want to know more, feel free to visit our website, to subscribe to the newsletter, or simply to get in touch to follow the program. We really thank the BrIAS and the BrIAS directors, Serge and Frank, also the coordinating team, Anya Garon and her team, the institute sponsors, of course, our institutions, ULB and VUB for the vision, but also the support for this program. We hope that it will spark debates, discussions, and new collaborations between our institutions, with stakeholders in the Brussels region, and we know there's a lot of need for that right now, and that we will reinforce Brussels as a place on the map where exchanging ideas is still valued and cherished. We now leave the floor for our collaborators at home who will present themselves, their role, and the artists in residence for this season. Camilla, the floor is yours. Okay.
Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see this full room once again. My name is Camilla Colombo. I am the co-director and co-founder of OHME, which is a Brussels-based organization dedicated to fostering dialogue between art and sciences. We do this through a number of very diverse activities that span from artistic residencies to public events and academic as well as public programs. We have a strong network and wide network of both cultural and academic partners. In particular, our partnership with BrIAS represents for us a very unique collaboration, one that really places artists at the heart of academic research, not as mere illustrators, but as genuine research partners with their own methodologies and ways of engaging with contemporary challenges. It is really, as I was saying, a genuine pleasure to launch this year residency program in partnership with BrIAS, which is now at its 3rd edition, yes, which a partnership that inscribes itself in a wider and more structural relationship with the ULB and a growing partnership with the VUB. Partnership that really bring together communities that share a fundamental commitment in believing that the power of deep inquiry, whether artistic or scientific, to illuminate the question we face collectively. We're thrilled to welcome 2 exceptional artists for this cycle of new cycle of BrIAS on democratic challenges. We have Philippe Bracquenier, whose works examine institutional power narratives, image authenticity, and the politics of information, and Aniuta Wiazemski-Nauert, who is beginning a preparation phase for her residency that will unfold next year. Both artists bring rigorous artistic practice and critical perspective that will enrich a conversation happening within the BrIAS community. So all the fellows in the room really engage with them. From February through May, Philippe and Aniuta will be embedded in the BrIAS Fellowship. They will participate in the seminars alongside the national and international fellows. This isn't about artists simply illustrating, as I was saying earlier, the scientific research. It's really about engaging within art and sciences as genuine research practices and partners research practices, bringing their own methodologies, questions, and ways of making sense of the world. These residencies will culminate in Crossing Wires, which is, as Emily said, an event that is part of a wider event on a broader week on art and democracy, focusing on the 4 pillars and more of the BrIAS program. A week that is being developed in partnership with BrIAS, GREGZAC, RABKO, which is the network of cultural organizations in Brussels, and a number of other partners within the universities and the cultural sector at large. On this occasion, many trajectories will converge at the end of May. Philippe Bracquenier residency, the launch and the research and the contextualization of Aniuta's residency, as well as the latest trajectory of the Kennis Nesten project, which is led by Helga Barth at the Science Outreach Department of the VUB, with the artist Dane Theodoridou. Thank you all for being here. It's again a pleasure to have the opportunity to open to artistic practices such high-level scientific context, and enjoy. I have to turn on the microphone. Yes, I think we have a performance now. I'm sorry, I don't my apologies, but I'm not on top of the. Well, I don't know what's best. What? I don't know. The full screen.
Hello. So the next point on the program is by Sabine Kabongo. Sabine is a Belgian Congolese singer who had a very rich career. Those who are, I would say, old enough. Mm-hmm. I dare not to say so. Yes. Zap Mama, does this ring a bell among you? Sabine was one of the singers of Zap Mama.
The first, one of the first.
One of the first.
The dinosaurs.
And then You played with a band, I always forget the name, Urku? Trilo Gurtu. You will explain about this. Before joining the Joe Zawinul band and the syndicate, Joe Zawinul syndicate, those who know Weather Report. Anyone knows Weather Report? Weather Report was the first band of Joe Zawinul. And Sabine was a lead singer for many years. 7 years.
Until he died.
Yes. And just to finish, Sabine is the only jazz singer ever, Belgian jazz singer ever, to win a Grammy Award. So we are very proud that Sabine is there.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here and to be able to share a few songs with you, songs that are related to democracy, of course, from far or from close. The voice is a fundamental and ultimate tool for democracy. In ancient Athens, in the 5th century BCE, democracy was based on equal right to speak, isegoria, and equality before the law, isonomia. One voice, one vote is a slogan that supported the democratic struggle during the decades of the apartheid system in South Africa and during the civil rights movement in the USA. The voice to share, to express ideas, opinions, the voice like a never-ending and elemental nourishing umbilical cord. Modern democracy faces the challenge of balancing freedom of expression with meaningful listening and deliberation versus noise and polarization. While power structures, corporate influence, and algorithms are shaping which voice are heard, and as a consequence creating unequal access to speech. Before that, many people had given the right to vote. They could sing. Songs help people to remember, resist, and belong. The first song I'm going to interpret is The Fiddle and the Drum. It's a Joni Mitchell composition. She wrote it in 1969. And she sang it systematically a cappella. Normally, she was always accompanied, but she sang it a cappella, and I suggest it was to give the full power to the words. And from my perspective, it looks like a love letter from a Canadian citizen to the USA. And so once again, my dear Johnny, my dear friend. And so once again, you are fighting us all. And when I ask you why, you raise your sticks and cry, and I fall. Oh, my friend, how did you come to trade the fiddle for the drum? You said we have turned like the enemies you earned, but I can remember all the good things you are. And so I ask you, please, can I help you find the peace and the star? Oh, my friend, what time is this? To trade the handshake for the feast. And so once again, oh, America, my friend. And so once again, you are fighting us all. And when we ask you why, you raise your sticks and cry, and we fall. Oh, my friend, we have all come to fear the beating of your drum. Thank you. So the next song is called Breath, in French, Le Souffle des Ancêtres, and it's a beautiful poem from the great writer Birago Diop. He's from Senegal, really known in the African continent. And it was translated and arranged by Sweet Honey in the Rock, who is an all-female band, all-female Afro-American activist and a cappella ensemble as well. They begin their career in 1973, and they are still singing. Heavy. Okay. Bum bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 diada 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 diada. Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Ah, shh, shh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. This the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. This the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Shh, shh. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. This the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. This the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Shh, shh. Listen more often. Listen more often. Listen, listen, listen. Thank you very much. And so I have a little last one. It's a song called Makchi. It's a song composed by the Native American composer, writer, musician Pura Fé. She's the spearhead of the 9th generation of women singers in our tribe and family. The song is a mix of Tulelo and Saponi languages from the Sioux Nation of Valley of Ohio. These languages are extinct now, but she's doing everything to revive everything that concerns her tribe. And the song says, our hearts are full and our minds are good. Our ancestors come and give us strength. Stand tall, sing, dance, and never forget who you are or where you're coming from. Makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spira ebi, makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spira ebi mampewa hokai no ta hon tani kai tai gewe me tai nankaya tiamuni ye wajise nankaya tiamuni ye wajise. Hey ya, 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 hey. Makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spiwa ebi, makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spiwa ebi mampewa kai nonk taon tani kai tai yewe me tai nankaya chamuni ye wajise nankaya chamuni ye wajise. Hey ya, 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 hey. Makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spiwa ebi, makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spiwa ebi mampewa honkai nonk ta hon tani kai tai gewe me tai nankaya tiamuni ye wajise nankaya tiamuni ye wajise. Hey ya, 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 makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spiwa ebi, makchi tambu am pigidi, makchi tambu kam spiwa ebi mampewa okai nonk taon tani kai tai gewe me tai nankaya tiamuni ye wajise nankaya tiamuni ye wajise. Thank you very much.
So after this beautiful intermezzo, many thanks for this. We go to our keynote speaker for today, and that is Sam van der Staak, who is from International IDEA, and he will present himself, I'm sure, and also his organization. So Sam van der Staak is the head of the regional program for Europe of International IDEA, and he will offer many new insights in the state of democracy, but I will give the floor to you. Welcome.
Put it on. Yeah, I need to change something real quick. Okay, while we wait for the presentation to be put up, I promise I won't sing. And I'm humbled to speak after such a great number of distinguished speakers and performers. It's really a pleasure and an honor. So thank you to all the esteemed dignitaries. Thank you to Professors Van Houten and Erzeel for thinking of me and inviting me here. Thank you for the chance to share what we have here on screen. The highlights of International Ideas, my organization's Global State of Democracy report, the most recent iteration, which I think links very well to the topic of what this academic year will be about, the state of democracy globally and what to do about it. Now, since we're in the heart of Europe, I'll start by referring to the speech of President von der Leyen of the European Commission that she gave just 2 days ago at the World Economic Forum. Because there in Davos, she ended her speech, maybe some of you follow that, with the words, Europe must speed up its push for independence, from security to economy, from defense to democracy. Democracy was the last word in her speech. Now, and that last point on democratic independence, as she called it, suggests 2 things. That democracy is under threat, and 2, that we have to defend it. So in my presentation, I'll unpack both those issues. That is the state of democracy and how we can defend it. But first, as was announced, the organizers asked me to say something about International IDEA. I think that's also a nice way to see these cross-linkages between academia and other fields. I come from the world of practitioners, what it is that we do. So let's start with the first slide. Here's International IDEA. We're an intergovernmental organization, 35 member states from all over the world. You see them in color here, really from all parts of the world, big and small, but all democracies. We're a think tank on the one hand, doing a lot of analyses, but on the other hand, we have in-country programs where we take all that analysis and support reforms. We have 19 offices active in over 80 countries in the world. And the topics that we work on in these countries are the ones you see here on screen. So elections, constitutional reform, political parties and parliaments, digitalization, climate, all issues that somehow relate to democracy, either in its very core or tangentially so. We support those in a number of ways. We do research, we do trainings, we bring people together from different parts of the world, and we do a lot of advocacy, including here with the EU, who, as we just heard from von der Leyen herself, is one of the key players on the future of democracy. Now, I'll say a few words about our annual flagship report, which is the report that we bring out at the end of each year, Global State of Democracy report, we call it, that we use to take the temperature of democracy worldwide. And we do that year on year, so we see the trends as well. But to understand how we do that, I have to say a couple things about methodology. First, how do we define democracy? Well, what you see here at the center is basically the core of how we see it, and then we break it up into smaller pieces. That's 2 key principles. One is popular control over decision-making, so basically rule by citizens. And 2 is the equal exercise of that control. So every voice counts equally. That concept, those 2 halves, we divide into 4 main categories that you see around the center bubble. It's representation, rights, rule of law, and participation. Now, the data that we then collect feed into these categories through a total of 154 indicators. We collect that for 173 countries in the world, basically all countries with a few exceptions. And we've started doing that, or counting back to 1975 until 2024 is the most recent iteration, and it takes a couple of months to collect and process all the data. So this came out at the end of 2025. 22 data sets in total. Right, so you have it here on screen. So this shows us trends, it shows us where we progress in democracy, but especially also where it declines. And I want to share a few of those trends with you. First, the quality of democracy around the world continues to deteriorate. It's been said already, but that's the main message. 2024, the last year for which we have data, is the 9th consecutive year in which net declines outnumbered net advances. So the 9th year, that means the point where these two lines start to cross is where things started to really go downhill. Between 2019 and 24, the past 5 years, we see that 54% of countries fell in at least one of the indicators, I mentioned indicators before, of democratic performance. That's 94 countries backsliding. This chart here shows how each region of the world fared in a 5-year period, right? So you can also compare continents to each other. So all regions experienced some degree of change in their democratic performance. African countries accounted for the largest share of global declines, 33%, followed by Europe with 25%. So Europe is really in a funk. The categories of rights, rule of law and representation, so out of the 4 categories, which include freedom of the press, judicial independence, credible elections, those suffered the broadest declines in this 5-year period. So those are the ones that we should be really concerned about. And I'll zoom in on 3 notably worrying trends. First, here you have them. First, freedom of the press. Freedom of the press weakened in 1/4 of countries overall. That's the broadest decline that we've seen since we started counting in 1975. So really concerning. This drop in press freedom was found in all regions, so all parts of the world, 15 African countries, 15 European countries, 6 countries in the Americas, 6 in Asia and the Pacific. What type of countries are we talking about? It includes autocratic countries, clearly, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Burkina Faso, Nicaragua. But it also includes mid-range performing South Korea, where the government initiated defamation cases against journalists. So we're all in this together. Second, credible elections and effective parliament. Basically the key institutions that uphold any democracy. They also suffered broad declines. About 20% of countries experienced that. And then thirdly, the weakest performing category for years now on end is the rule of law. When we compare 2019 to 2024, we see that 19% of countries had rule of law downturns. And perhaps even more worrying is the level to which they dropped, with 41% of countries falling into the group of low performers. So we bracket them, and 41% falls in the lowest category. Now, there's a lot of doom and gloom. But I also want to share some upward trends, some more positive developments. Won't overplay their significance because it's clear democracy is not doing well. But first, somewhat surprising finding now for a couple of years already is the absence of corruption that we measure, which for the 15th consecutive year in a row shows that countries that advance in this area outnumber those that decline. And that suggests that even though it's still a small increase, a small positive outcome, it does represent 10% of all countries. And that suggests that governments are seeing corruption increasingly as their Achilles heel. It's what citizens are protesting against. It's what they demand of governments more and more, from Guatemala to South Korea to Bangladesh to Indonesia. And this is really shaking up governments. So that's a bright spot. Second bright spot is that in some contexts we do see improvement after a period of backsliding. 2 cases that really draw global attention in the media and everywhere is Brazil and Poland. Those 2 stand out because previously they were in the news for the exact opposite, right? They suffered from executive aggrandizement, undermining of the rule of law, constraints on civic space. And in 2024, we saw a turnaround. Each showed a significant improvement in multiple factors following a milestone election. So there also we see that elections continue to matter. Elections themselves may not be the same quality as we had before, but when we see a positive change, it's often after an election, so we have to protect elections. Now that's global. What does that tell us for Europe, where we're now at the heart of? Europe remains the highest performing region in the global state of democracy indices. So in our data set, year on year, we see Europe is the best place to be for any democracy. But of course, it's also declining. It started at a higher level, but it's declining. Still, an overwhelming majority of all 45 European countries that we measure remain high or mid-performing in democratic performance. That's the green and orange bars combined, right? So vast majority of countries are actually still performing at a high level. But even though Europe started from that higher point, we see that democracy did worsen over the last 5 years, especially in the areas of civil liberties and credible election. You see it here in this spider diagram. Now, Eastern Europe accounted for nearly half of those declines that you see in this graph. The majority of those driven by crackdowns on civil society and political opposition in countries like Belarus, Georgia, and Russia. Really, that was exceptional. And also here, 1 in 3 countries declined in freedom of the press. Again, in that same time span of 2019 to 2024. But not just in the very authoritarian countries that I mentioned. There's also cases like Italy, where intelligence agencies use spyware against migrant rights activists and journalists. Or Slovakia, where the 2024 closure of the public broadcaster was decried as political interference in independent media. So 2 countries that are in the EU. So that's the diagnosis. That's part 1. What to do against it. You know, if democracy is under attack, how do we start to analyze the future? Because although Europe still performs higher than any other region, it's clear that we can't be complacent. That's the second part of this presentation on how to defend democracies. Democracy is facing a perfect storm. I took this from The Economist. It's not my own drawing. But it does show how important art is in this discussion. It's a perfect storm of a couple of factors. Autocratic resurgence inside the borders of the EU. It's what we see in Hungary previously, Poland, Slovakia, and so on and so forth. Attacks on democracy from outside. Previously mostly coming from the east, but let's be honest, increasingly so from the west as well. And then acute civic uncertainty due to massive social, political, economic changes that citizens experience. So all these 3 things are coming together at the same time and are creating havoc, and that is really at the heart of what we saw in these trends. It's a challenge that's almost unfathomable. It's not insurmountable, though, and I really believe that it's something that we can fight. But if we want to fight back, if Europe wants to really tackle this, then we need to protect the key elements of democracy, like elections and the rule of law. It has to protect these from autocratic threats, from the inside as well as from the outside. Luckily, we don't have to start from scratch. We started realizing this about 9 years ago, and tools have been put in place. Especially the EU has stepped up its push against rule of law backsliding, with some caution and hesitation in the beginning, but now we've seen monitoring tools, and you see them here on screen on rule of law reports that the EU has. We have legal instruments more and more. We have financial conditionality tied to the COVID funding, and more of that will come in the next EU budget. And this brings muscle to the instruments that we can use to push back against rule of law violators, such as Hungary or Slovakia and previously Poland. But still, the group of illiberal leaders in Europe continues to grow. And so do their attacks on independent institutions and free press and civil society. So the pushback against threats to democracy from the inside needs to strengthen further. That's a clarion call. Secondly, protection against outside threats has also luckily gained importance in Europe. This is what President von der Leyen meant when she called 2 days ago for Europe's democratic independence. We have to defend ourselves to remain independent. The EU is currently setting up a number of things, a European Democracy Shield, some of you may have heard of it, a Center for Democratic Resilience that will coordinate the efforts of the 27 member states to fight foreign interference, to build resilient institutions. So that's all very important. Here's a shield, a democracy shield. But democracy in Europe means that it can't be a fortress either. Europe is not an island. We can't just build a fence around ourselves and think that as long as we stay democratic, that we'll survive. If we don't fight the threats to democracy outside, we won't be safe on the inside, because we can't operate in an international vacuum. And in the current geopolitical context, autocracy is on the rise. We saw that in the Global State of Democracy report, the trends that we showed, but we also know that that trend is continuing. Just over the past weeks, we saw the crackdowns in Iran, for instance. Thousands of people that died as a result of autocratic repression. And if recent history shows Europe anything, is that this continent is not immune to democratic shocks from the outside. We only have to look at Syria and the immigration waves that created once an autocrat started pushing its people. Or Ukraine when neighboring autocratic Russia started invading. So the state of democracy, and especially autocracy around the world, has a direct impact on how Europe experiences the impact. Now, of course, it's been said already, but the main threat to the credence of democracy globally is the drifting away of allies such as the US. Right? Once the beacon of democracy, not perfect, but still it was the model to follow. And when that model goes, it has implications for the appeal of democracy worldwide, of smaller countries that are starting to wonder, why should we be democratic if that shining city or country on the hill is not even abiding by it himself? So that impact is for the state of democracy, but it goes much further than just the functioning of democracy itself, because even the whole rules-based order that has traditionally depended on democratic norms is at stake. Because the rules-based order was built on the equality between citizens and countries and the universality of rights. All that is part and parcel of democracy. And so if we see that democracy declines in a big country like the US at home, it leads to the retreat of the multilateral order abroad. So the two are directly related. So if we invest in a strong global community of democracies, and I believe that that's what we must do, then we also build a stronger rules-based order globally that works for Europe in return. So doing that helps to diminish not just foreign interference in European democracies, but investing in democracy outside of our borders also reduces shocks in the international system. The shocks that we've seen since the arrival of President Trump a year ago, with all the trade sanctions and the security threats and the undermining of climate deals. So the shocks will also reduce if our partners stay democratic. And of course, the multilateral order, as I already mentioned. So this means that the one remaining bastion of democracy, Europe, should step up its game, should invest in democracy, and that it should do that abroad and at home, both at the same time. And that brings me to the last component of the perfect storm that I mentioned. What do we do at home? Europe should profoundly reform government so that it delivers, because that is exactly what citizens are asking of us. We cannot just blame autocrats. We also have to critically review the functioning of our institutions so that they deliver fairness and inclusion and shared prosperity to citizens. Because only when citizens believe that these institutions work for us will they want to step up for it and defend it. So Europe has to continue to define itself as a place of democracy, a place of unprecedented freedoms, of legality, of equality and prosperity. Because only once it does that will citizens see democracy that is not just worth cherishing, but also worth defending. And defending will increasingly be the name of the game. And that exercise starts with young people that universities have in abundance. And that's why it's so important that you are doing this program here. In other words, investing in democracy is the best way to strengthen Europe as a community, but also to withstand the current geopolitical headwinds. And I'll come back to President von der Leyen and her words in Davos when she said Europe must speed up the independence of its democracy. Well, I feel if it's not democracy, what else is worth defending? Thank you very much.
So we have time for a short Q&A. So if somebody has some questions for someone at Staak. Yes.
Thank you so much for this very clear and also very terrifying presentation. But I've also heard some hope and some optimism. Could you give some examples of initiatives that are taking place in European member states that you find very positive and that you think that are effective?
Yeah. Do we take questions one by one, or do we collect?
There was another one, I think. Oh, there's several. You
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to go there first.
I'd also like to thank you for the comprehensive presentation. And I was wondering, when you were talking about the decline of democracy in Europe and pointing more towards Eastern Europe, if you have heard or maybe even read the report by Amnesty International that is called underrepresented and over-restricted, the state of peaceful protest in 21 European countries, that shows how there the situation is with the right for peaceful protest, which is one of the basic human rights within European countries, also in Western Europe, such as France or UK or here in Belgium. And if you have indeed what your assessment of that is.
Would you like to take another question, or will you answer these
Sure,
first?
yeah.
Yeah?
Thank you for the presentation. It was really informative, and also thank you for the work that IDEA does. We use it a lot, so we're very grateful as scholars. I wanted also thinking of, we had a book presentation this morning. I would have asked you to give your perspective on the relationship between demand and supply, so citizens and elites, and where you think the stress is. Because, for example, this morning we heard that we see a lot of democratic backsliding when elites that are not supportive of democracy and liberal democracy come into power, and that citizens feel that they are not empowered enough to do anything, at least before elections, right? So the idea of voting out is the only way in which European citizens seem to envision resistance to democratic backsliding. And I was wondering, what is your take on that?
So, repeat that, your question.
How do you see the relationship between elite and voters and citizens, and the fact that voters seem to think that they don't have any other instrument than elections to vote out non-democratic elites?
Right. Let me start with thank you very much for these questions. So normally when I present to academic audiences, I fear the methodological questions that come, and you have asked none of those, so I'm very happy that I'm not being quizzed about methodology and statistics. Question one, positive examples. Yes, we have to stay optimistic. It's a moral duty. You hear that more and more these days. As I said, Poland, I think, was a positive example. Not just a positive example of a society that decides to change course, but also of a then government that tries to clean up. Has it been successful enough? No. What are we seeing? It's apparently super difficult to restore a government and a system that has deliberately been broken down. So we're learning a lot of lessons. We tried to help the Polish government when it first came to power. But this exercise we have to do better. How do we restore democracy after it's been destroyed or at least severely damaged? But I think Poland is at least showing the way that it's possible, but you have to stay the course. Another very positive example, as dramatic as it may be, is the democratic resilience of Ukraine. We see a country that in the midst of war for years on end now is standing up to defend basically democracy. At the same time, when there are corruption scandals coming in the midst of that, society rises and pushes back its president that currently has enormous power and forces him to actually retreat on his earlier points. So we see examples of civic and democratic resilience that are not just good for, in this case, Ukraine, but also a shining example for other countries. And then lastly, I think democracy doesn't need to be explained anymore, the importance of democracy. Back in the day, I've been working on this topic for the longest of times. I would need to explain on birthday parties and why this work was needed. Well, I think we've had a wake-up call collectively. We see that democracy is back at the center of discussion. Does it mean that we have the solutions? No, at least not all of them. But a sense of urgency has come. And that, I think, is the start of any solution. So that's, I hope, a couple of positives in the midst of an overall gloomy picture. Peaceful protests. I think there's two parts to that question. We do see in the trends of what we measure that protests, citizen action, participation is one of the few factors in democracy that quite regularly performs well. That's probably for all the bad reasons. Citizens increasingly feel that democracy is not working for them, and maybe that's also an answer to the third question. People don't feel that going to the elections once in every 4 years or more often, in the case of my country, I'm from the Netherlands, does it? That doesn't change the system, and people are asking for new solutions. I do feel, we support democracy all over the world at International IDEA. Europe is quite ahead in experimenting for alternatives. Citizen assemblies and participatory budgeting, and there's all these new ways. Some of them are a little bit worn out by now, but this is a laboratory. I think Europe is far outpacing other parts of the world in finding solutions and how we redesign democracy. Is it enough? Again, no. And that's why there's cross-sectoral thinking that is being discussed here, that's being set up. That's so important because we have to almost start from scratch. But I do think that creative ideas will come. They are coming. It's a matter of time to see how do we replace the old infrastructure by something new. I think with that I've answered all three questions.
I still have a question here.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. If I understood you correctly, you stated that Europeans should not only care about democracy internally within the continent, within Europe, but also defend democracy all around the globe. I was wondering, how should we do that as Europeans? Do you have some ideas about it? And are there any pitfalls in doing that?
Yeah. So I think I gave the arguments why it's important, right? How do we do it? I work for an organization that goes to countries all over the world and helps to organize elections and strengthen parliaments. I think that stuff we've been doing for quite a few decades. It will remain important. But on top of that, I think we now need democracies to come together. We need new infrastructures, new alliances in the world. When we saw the speech by the Canadian Prime Minister yesterday at Davos, this is the lines of where we're headed. Can countries that traditionally saw the alliances on the basis of trade relationships or security relationships or didn't have strong relations redefine why they collaborate? And one of those tissues for collaborating, I think, is democracy. Can we look around the world to see where Europe finds its democratic allies and see, can we build new foundations on top of which we build economic ties, we build security ties, we build climate ties? Because it's the values that always have to underlie these multilateral systems. And as soon as the values go, all the rest becomes transactionalism, it's deal making. That's what we're seeing happening now. So I think for Europe, this is an opportunity to say, okay, where is that new alliance coming? Which are the countries that are strongly pro-democracy, that may not be enormous in size or maybe mid-sized? You've got countries like the Philippines and Indonesia, emerging economies, large countries in population, and they want to be democratic. Are they perfect? No. But they have this aspiration to be more and more democratic. And can we get closer to them, integrate our democracies, define ourselves as a collection of democracies, and then build all the other things that in which we collaborate economically, strategically, security-wise, on the basis of that democratic foundation. So maybe those are some of the contours that we will need to see develop in the next couple of years, and for which the EU can be a driver.
Thank you very much for the last comment. I appreciate very much that you mentioned the need of building bridges with other regions, other democratic countries all over the world. But my question, my comment is a little bit provocative in the sense that instead you mentioned Europe as like a laboratory of the forefront of democracy, a laboratory of democracy, innovation, and a place where we need to help other places, other countries to defend democracy. But don't you think that there are a lot of lessons in other democratic countries all over the world that can be useful for Europe? So instead of going there and explaining and teaching how democratic can be resilient and how to defend democracy, we should also learn a lot of things from South Korea, from Brazil, from a lot of other democracy all over the world that show incredible resilience and where civil society, political parties, institutions prove in a way much more resilient to authoritarian threats compared to Western democracy.
I'm very glad that you say this. I mean, I raised Brazil in my presentation. I think in Europe we're not seeing this. It's a reflex of this securitization of democracy, right? We feel we're under attack, and the natural response when you're under attack is to put up your walls, look to the inside, and see the outside world as a potential threat. The case of Brazil is exactly what a lot of European countries should have done. It's what the US should have done. An attempted coup. You take a judicial process to address it, and you solve it through the rule of law, so that you clean up your democracy. It's a painful process with a lot of critique, but they managed to get over it, and their institutions helped. And that's a lesson that we can't afford to ignore in Europe, because we have Poland, but as I mentioned before, Poland is still trying to find its way upwards. We have to find more cases where we can celebrate our successes and not just put up our defenses. So I can only agree with you.
Thank you for the presentation. I can't stop putting my hypothesis before you and ask you a comment on that. That is that the European construction is a construction with member states that are still in the framework of nation states, basically monocultural nation states. And what we see happening is that nationalism is going to the right, is going to conservative, so the authoritarian trends are carried by these kind of trends and movements. And what we see happening is that cities are resisting. In Hungary, it's Budapest. In Turkey, it's Istanbul. In the States today, with IC razzias, in fact, we see the resistance of cities. So my working hypothesis is to really save democracy in Europe, we have to develop, on the one hand, Europeanness, but on the basis of urbanity, much more than on the basis of nationality. So we have to defend a democratic Europe as a post-national project. What do you think of that?
I sense that we're in for a long debate tonight. No, I agree. A lot of the innovations will be found at local level. That's what we're seeing already, right? And
it's urban level, not local. It's not a local of the state for me.
Well, let me put it this way. I think citizens ultimately feel that democracy still works best for them at the level that is closest to them, right? Where they feel they're a community. So that's where a lot of the solutions will have to come from. But we can't ignore the nation state. We can't ignore the supranational level because we are part of a construct that's called the EU. And the way the world's going, that will be the recipe for our survival more and more. A nation state that is able to strike trade deals or put up security structures. I'm not saying I like it, but that seems to be where the world is going. So we probably have to do all of it at once. But a lot of the innovations that the national and supranational level are looking at can definitely come from the local level or the urban level, so I agree with you. But it can't be the only thing, I fear.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I've seen other hands, but I'm afraid we're running a little bit out of time. Thank you very much for the presentation. We can still discuss in a more informal format. We'll ask you to exit the room through the main door there where Anya is. You can grab a drink, do the little tour around the hall, and we'll re-enter through this door for the final piano session. Thank you very much.
Merci.